So it's late at night, and I just haven't had time lately to put any videos or updates on any of my projects or Guppy related things on our little group page. And I thought I would take some time while I'm in the fish room up late doing a little bit of maintenance and talk just for a minute about growing guppies up. I have I do know people that struggle to grow up their fry quickly and get any size to them. And I can raise several generations in the time it's taken them to get one generation half grown. And I believe the difference is two things. First of all, guppies, although many of them can tolerate room temperature and not necessarily have to have a heater, they are going to grow a lot faster if you give them warmth. Now, you don't have to make it 82 degrees. They'll grow just fine at 75, 76 degrees. And then it's warm enough for good growth, but cool enough to where you're not going to burn through the guppy's lifespan too fast. The other is feeding. You need to feed your guppies very heavily several times a day if you want to get good growth out of them. I feed 3 times a day, every day, and I feed quite heavily. I feed prepared foods, and I sprinkle food over the tank like this. I don't have any food right now, but I sprinkle food over the tank. And I keep adding food until I see some sinking to the bottom. Now, I have scavengers in all my tanks, even if it's just snails, and they clean up anything that's left over. But contrary to what you might read in literature, guppies don't just feed on the surface. They will chase it down the middle, and when they're all done with what's on the top and the middle, they'll come scavenge the bottom and pick all the food off the bottom. So they're not going to let it go to waste. They're going to eat it all. And keeping those guppies with big, fat, full tummies is what's going to make them grow fast in those warm temperatures. If you have warm temperatures but you don't feed heavily, you won't get good growth. Feeding is the absolute key to getting good growth on guppies. A lot of people will say it's water changes. In my experience, I've gone months and months without water changes and just doing top-offs in my systems with planted tanks and have no ill effects on guppy growth. I believe it's warm temperatures and good feeding. Now, if you aren't running planted tanks like I do, and this tank has just been trimmed. Normally there's a lot more bushy plant growth. There's duckweed all over the top of it. It's just been maintenanced, so it's not looking like it normally would. It's looking much better. But usually there's a whole lot more plant growth in here, and duckweed across the top, like I said. If you're not running lots of plants in your tanks, that may not work. Water changes might be more critical for you, but when you're running tons of plants, they consume all the waste, anything that would pollute the water. You can see down in there, even though I've done water change, there's still mold, there's still bits of detritus from fish waste and snail waste. But that doesn't pollute the water because the plants use up the nutrients that would be considered pollutants in the water that would negatively affect the guppy's growth. So in my system, with my method, I'm not dependent on water changes for good growth of guppies. Now, I do water changes every week, and that's because I believe that the plants deplete the micronutrients and minerals in the water over the course of a week, and I've noticed when I do water changes, I get better plant growth. Irregardless of fertilizing, water changes seem to promote better plant growth, so that's why I do water changes. Now, again, guppy growth I found to be much better if you feed heavily. And then the last note on feeding, I'll say, is feed a variety of foods. I have gone to the last several weeks where I'm just feeding prepared diet, so I'm feeding flake food and pellets exclusively right now, as well as a ground up fry food. And I've noticed no change in the fish's growth or reproduction. However, when I was feeding live baby brine shrimp, I was only feeding, at the best time, I was feeding once a day. And most of that time period, I was lucky if I got a few times a weekend, because I just don't have time to keep up with maintaining hatching live baby brine shrimp. So contrary to what people tell you, you don't have to feed live baby brine shrimp or even frozen foods to get good growth out of guppies. I will tell you, if you have the time, because I've seen it in other hobbyist tanks who do have the time, if you have the time to hatch live baby brine shrimp and keep up with cleaning the hatchery and harvesting and starting them over again and feeding multiple times, like 2 or 3 times a day with live baby brine shrimp, especially on your fry, you'll see a huge difference in growth. It will grow much faster and they'll get much, much bigger than what you can achieve on prepared diets. However, unless you're going to show fish, that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if you grow giant guppies if you're not showing them, unless you just enjoy that, which is totally fine. But for me, I'm enjoying keeping the fish and breeding them, and then I take them to the pet store. And as far as pet store quality goes, they're still getting a better quality fish than they can probably order in, simply because they're healthier, they're sturdier, they're not going to struggle with disease or water conditions in the store like fish they would order in. So in that sense, they're a much better quality fish because of health, and they're not bad on color and size either. They're good enough in those areas. And so for my purposes, it just didn't make sense to continue raising live baby brine shrimp. But it's not a bad option if you have the discipline and time to keep up with it. Now, I am planning on starting to mix up rapashi every week. Monday is one of my days off, so I plan to, on Mondays, while my wife is at work, because it is kind of stinky and she doesn't like the smell, mix up rapashi and slice it up into cubes and feed that out every week as well. So right now I feed a blend of flakes that I mix, which is extreme krill flakes and extreme algae or spirulina flakes. I also feed fluval bug bites, tropical flakes, and then I feed hikari micro pellets, as well as the aquarium co-op fry food and shrimp pellets. So those are the prepared foods I'm feeding right now, and I really love those. They work really well. I will say on guppies or any live bearer, adding some kind of algae-based food, I believe, is hugely important. A lot of people focus just on the protein, and although that is important for growth, these fish in nature, in the wild, algae does make up a significant portion of their diet, in addition to insect larvae and things like that. So, and tiny crustaceans. So I would definitely always feed in the mix a algae-based flake. And I prefer flakes for guppies to pellets, although it is nice to have a pellet. So I do feed the micro pellet. Flakes are nice because they crush up so fine, which works for frying juvenile fish really well. Pellets are harder to grind up. You can do it for sure, but it's a little bit more work. Whereas the flakes, I can just grab a pinch, grind it between my fingers, and away I go, which works great. So I prefer flakes, just for the convenience. But yeah, I feed a ton of food to these guys. And this what we're looking at here is my experimental colony that I'm trying to produce these guys here. This is generation 2 male, and that's only because his dad developed a tumor and died. Had his dad lived, I would still have him. He wasn't that old, and he would be the main male to breed. But he's not too far off from his dad. His dad had a completely red tail, red dorsal, red down the back, and just a blonde front. This guy's got more color on the body. He's developing a gold lower sword, which is pretty interesting, but he still has the red back, the red dorsal, and the mostly red tail. The females, I'm starting to get more consistent females. I've only got one male that even resembles dad, which is this guy. The females, though, are coming out more consistently with red tails. I've got one original that just showed up randomly in my Japan Blue Gold colony, and then I've got her daughter, and then there are 2 or 3 other daughters in here that are just beginning to show red in the tail, and then I've got several females showing yellow in the tail. So I've got to go through and sort out females and get everything out that's not developed a red starting. You can see right there, she's just starting. This girl right here, just starting to get that red. That's how they all started, and then it slowly spread into more of the caudal fin. So I want to get these females with red tails and the males with red dorsal, red down the back, and ideally a fully red tail. But if they develop a gold lower sword like he's starting to, I may change gears and breed for that sword. Unfortunately, he's the only male I have that even comes close to what I'm going for, and every other male has been kind of a cull, what would be a cull of the Japan Blue Gold double swords. So I'm not getting consistent males yet, but the females are getting consistent, and that's a good sign. That means I'm getting closer. So I need to go through and sort these guys out. And again, they're just a random throw from the Japan Blue Gold colony that I have just tons and tons of. I also get pink ones, pinky purple males out of that colony, which I plan to I want to isolate those as well, because they're a beautiful pink color. I don't see them right now, but there is one in here. And then I have a couple females that almost look like the platinum Snow White guppy females, which I have never crossed with this line. And they've there's that one. He doesn't look pink under the light when he's right up under the light. He looks kind of orangey, but you can see him right there. Under natural light or light at a different angle, he is very pink and purple. So I'd love to try and isolate that as well and get a pink or purple guppy going from these guys. But yeah, they throw all kinds of random things. I've also got some pastels that have come out of this colony that are right over here, if I can find them. There's one. See him up there in the back corner? He's like a pastel. He's got some pastel colors. Again, under overhead light, he doesn't look as good, but under ambient light in the room, from the windows, when it bounces off of him, he's got really bright pastel colors. And there's a second one in there somewhere. This is my male tank, where as I pull males out and let them grow in here, then whatever I'm not keeping for the next generation, I take to the pet store. So, oh, here's another pastel here, and he's got kind of goldy orange developing in the tail. I lost him. There he is. So, yeah, that's what I've got going on in here, and I'm excited about that colony though of those reds that I'm trying to develop out of the Japan Blue Golds, and I think I'm going to call them like a red comet or something like that, or a flaming comet, or I don't know yet, rainbow comet, I don't know. But I really like this guy, and I love that he's starting to get a lower sword. There's tons of fry in here, so they're just as prolific as the Japan Blue Golds, so I'm gonna have to really cull them down. And then another experiment I have that is, if I can catch this guy is the last Japan Blue Gold double sword guppy in this tank. This was the original colony tank, and they outgrew it, so I moved him into a 20-gallon. But a friend of mine sent me home with fish and a couple of these blue guppies, fry. There were 4 of them, ended up in the bag, and so I said, well, I'll take them home and throw them in what was basically this empty 5-gallon. Well, I ended up with 3 males and 1 female. I pulled 2 of the males out, and these guys look like they match. They're at the back now. You can see the darkness in the tail. The male's starting to get some blue color to him. So what I'd like to do is just see what they turn into and decide if I'm going to keep them going or not. Sorry about the algae on the glass. I just changed water, but I haven't scrubbed algae on this tank for a while. I'd like to see what they develop into, and maybe I'll try and keep them going, or maybe I'll scratch them, take them into the pet store as assorted guppies, because they're not a pure line at all. Try and start the pink line in here, but for now I'm just seeing what grows out, and I cannot catch this guy. I've tried several times. That little Japan blue gold double sword has been a booger to catch, and if he hasn't already bred that female, I may end up with a ruined project before it gets started, just because he's in there. But these little blues here are actually descended from a line that is out of Japan blue guppies. So they're closely related anyhow, so it might not be too big of a deal. We'll see. But yeah, that's what's going on. That's kind of my little updates I've got so far. And then maybe we'll end by just looking at how gorgeous this beautiful full red albino male is. His brother up there isn't doing so hot. I'm not sure what's wrong with him. I may end up losing him, but this guy's doing awesome. His fins are huge. He's doing beautifully, and the 2 girls are doing very well also. And they've produced a few drops of fry, which you can see some of the fry in here now. I don't know why they're all hanging out. Oh, probably because normally right now they would be lights out, and they're probably a little stressed that the daylight period is extending beyond normal time. But I like to have all the lights on in here while I'm doing maintenance, even if I'm not working on this tank. I did work on this tank earlier this week, trimming and water change. So there's some Dalmatian mollies in here, Dalmatian balloon mollies, a pair of them. They've had fry as well. There's a few of their fry in here. And then one random koi sword made its way in here. I've got to catch her out, but man, they are fast, and I haven't had the gumption to try and catch it. And as long as it's just the one, she's not going to reproduce. Contrary, a lot of people think that all of the Posiliids can interbreed, but the reality is only Posiliids. Posiliid is the family that guppies, swordtails, mollies, platies, and things like that belong to. Only members in the genus Posilia, mollies and guppies, can interbreed. Anything that's not in the same genus can't crossbreed. So Xiphophorus, like this swordtail, will never be able to crossbreed with a molly or a guppy. And in my experience, as long as they have members of the opposite sex that are the same species, so as long as I have a male and female guppy and a male and female molly, they're not going to breed with each other. They're just going to stay with their own species. That's been my experience anyway. So, yeah. Anyway, hope that was helpful. If you want to grow fry quickly, you do need clean water. So if you aren't using plants, you may have to do water changes. But I have all the plants, so I don't need the water changes to keep the water clean and the quality up. You need warm temperatures. So again, 75, 76 degrees or warmer. Although the warmer you go, the faster you're going to burn their metabolism and the shorter their lifespan will be. So keep it probably in the mid 70s. And then feed 3 to 5 times a day, heavy feedings every time. And again, if you don't have the plants and scavengers and system to consume excess food or waste, then you will be dependent on water changes. But in my system, water changes aren't necessary to control water quality. So that's my tricks, is feed heavy, warmer temperatures, and clean water one way or another.